Good afternoon, pretty Sarah Hepburn.
Good afternoon, Nancy. I've missed you.
Well, some girl here has been running around hanging out with Tom Cruise. What am I going to do? How am I going to compete with Tom Cruise? I'm not.
Well, he's just gone in the blink of an eye. This
Is
is,
he?
how Tom Cruise is. He rushes down the stairs, he signs some autographs, gone in a flash.
We
He's got to save the planet. He's got to save movie going
there
as
we
we
go.
know it.
Well, I helped contribute to that saving. Went and saw the movie on opening day in a big theater, like the biggest theater I've ever seen in New York City, actually.
Mm,
And I will say that every time he was running, I guess there's like a compilation of Tom Cruise
yeah.
running, and so every time he started to run, we're like trying not to laugh out loud. But I mean, it was enjoyable. It's like nonstop action,
Yeah, I did not
non-stop.
enjoy it.
Okay, okay.
I felt like I was in a blender full of stunts for 3 hours
It
and
really
somebody just
is.
hit frappe. And it was like earth, land, like water, over air, overhead. It's
Plane,
just
plane, old plane, biplane, other plane. No, it's
you know how I am.
this is true. Oh, see, there
The
was
water
this.
sequence, the underwater water sequence, I was flat out asleep.
So, as first of all, hello, listeners. It's nice to hear you or see you if you're on our new YouTube channel, and if you are, then you should be subscribing there because it's free. Um, Sarah likes talking in movies. This is not the movie for Sarah Hepla. It is, I mean, really, even other action films, at least they have like a little sliver of like story, other kind of. So, no, there's just go, 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 go. But see, I like that.
They
I
just
like that
don't
stuff.
care. I wrote notes during the movie and it says like Russian submarine, Angela Bassett is president, excuse me. Fate of the world, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, Bering Strait, motion sickness from the plane fight.
Yeah.
Like I that's basically the movie. The Entity, that was another
The
one.
entity. Yes, the entity and the little cube. Anyway, I liked it. It was fine. It was fun going to a movie at 2:15 in the afternoon, which is not something that I usually do. So
Well, this will probably be coming out on Memorial Day, so we should say happy Memorial Day to everyone.
it is Happy Memorial Day. I have a little piece up. I actually wrote it last year, but I reposted it today over on the Twitter machine. A slightly unusual Memorial Day story about my uncle. I will put a link to that here. War is hell was the comment from someone, which is true. Um,
Who will you be memorializing on Memorial Day? Your uncle?
well, I did. I did that last year, but that was a very hard story to write because his story, he lost his legs and his all of his fingers, but two, a thumb and a finger on his left hand when he was 19-year-old Marine, and his life
What war was he fighting in?
Vietnam, and
Mm.
he was in Da Nang, and he picked up a radio that was sitting on a stump, and it was a booby trap, and this is a 19-year-old guy, incredibly
Yeah.
athletic. He was a Marine, so clearly, he was physically capable. And his life didn't get better from there. Let's put
Oh.
it that. He died a couple of years ago, but there were other complications, not just the terrible, awful physical stuff, which he actually wound up doing some pretty cool stuff. He became a like rated disabled skier and sailed with the America's Cup for a little while, I think, or at least like as a prized passenger. But there were a lot of troubles, and yeah, it's just hard. It's just hard. Um, we read today. Do you know when Memorial Day started? What year?
Um, and 2 years ago,
Baby girl.
I think. Isn't that
1860,
right?
1868, but close. That's close. So after the Civil War.
I had the right 2
Yeah,
centuries.
yeah. That's hey, look, this call a friend. Yeah,
After the Civil War makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
look, most of us are very insulated from the wars that have been fought,
Oh, yeah.
whether for freedom or, for who the hell knows what. And Vietnam is such a head scratcher. It's very, very confusing. We were fighting with the French to colonize an independent country. Like it's strange. But you know, women especially just we don't have that sense of growing up and like especially young think about young men in the 70s, they used to do lotteries on TV where they would like the lottery number would come down and then this was the number that was pulled out. And if that was your birthday, you were gone.
Well, I mean, it used to be that, every man at 18 was you were gonna go you were drafted. But with there are certain exceptions, like some people in college and, if you had to like my father had a heart arrhythmia, so he went joined the Merchant Marines, he would have joined, some one of the armed services. You didn't really have a choice. And you can remember in the 60s and 70s, amscraying to Canada became a movement. All kinds of movements stemmed from the anti-war movement. I still do think there is the impulse, and we saw this after 9/11, for people to fight. I mean, the armed services just had an incredible uptick after 9/11 of people volunteering to serve or joining the services. And, in other wars, when Pearl Harbor happens
Mhm.
and you've already been watching the war for however many years in Europe, I mean, people lined up. I mean, they want to defend their way of life in their country.
Yeah,
But
including my brother.
including is that when he signed up?
My brother had done ROTC through college, but it was peacetime. It was the
Yeah,
90s.
yeah,
And he went into nuclear submarines. He did his time for ROTC, but it was 98. And he was sort of like, well,
yeah.
it doesn't
Done.
really look like we're going to need these
Yeah,
submarines. And he went on and did other things. And then 9/11 happened, and he enlisted in the Naval Reserves, which he's been in now for like almost, well, yeah, 25 years.
my family, everybody pretty much served on my mom's side, and my dad was an only child, Merchant Marine. He couldn't do anything else besides that. And then really my high school, college, young 20s, 30s, like I really didn't know people that had been in the service. But now as I get older, I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who served that joined the service
In
voluntarily,
college,
obviously.
I did not know many people,
No.
and my brother was highly unusual for being in the service. And every time he would come to one of my parties in Austin, some woman would, corner him and complain about how there's no women on the military submarines. And he was so patient with them. He really got it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't in a way fair that was one of the last bastions of male exclusivity in the military was the submarines because they had to then outfit them with, you know, it's such a strange
Yeah.
thing to be underwater for 3 months.
Can you ask your brother how it smelled?
My brother did not have a good time on those
I,
submarines. He
I
can tell you
cannot
that.
imagine 60 men on a submarine for 3 months underwater. I can't imagine that was the most fragrant place
It's a
to
tough
be.
time.
Yeah. Hey, man, sacrifices. Um, so, how's your weekend been otherwise?
Good. I'm crashing out, man. I'm crashing out. All the sleep I can get.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
it's like a sleep buffet over here. I've been
I would like a sleep buffet. I
You need a
would.
sleep buffet.
Oh man, we should get a visual. Who wants to do this? Curtis, calling Curtis.
Yeah.
Make us a sleep buffet, man. That would be. I would have been at that place last night at 1 o'clock when everyone else was crashed out. When I woke up, I've had a very. I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but I'm just going to say one thing. I'm just going to say to all you sociopaths out there, stop
Oh.
wasting our fucking time, man. Just the fucking time that these people take up is driving me bananas. And it's not for an article. If it's for an article, at least I'm getting paid for it. But okay, that's all I'm saying. That's it. I blew off my steam.
Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your service, everyone.
Been enlisted here. I'm against my will. So
I know you
fuck.
have.
I know you
I
have.
know, baby.
Sorry to be opaque, people, but it's better that way.
You're not that opaque these days.
I'm not that opaque. Anybody that really wants to know what's going on, already know. They're like, Nancy, can I help you?
Oh my
Yes, the
god.
answer
We
is
all know
yes.
Matt Welch is a sociopath. It's
No,
okay. You can say it. You can say it.
he is not. He's my savior. But
Yeah, no,
anyway,
I made that joke because it's so
I
obvious
know,
that
I
he's
know.
not.
Um,
A little
so
OCD.
so speaking of things that drive people crazy,
Oh my goodness.
girl. Now we know here our dear friend Mike Pesca did name me knee jerk Nancy, and it is true. It is definitely true that I get up ahead of steam and I kick and kick figuratively, literally. But something happened last week where my girl, Sarah Hepla, I loaned you my knee. I think
Oh,
I
I
loaned you my
know.
knee.
Oh,
And
it's really I mean, it'd be funny. I'm always like I try to be, like, very chill and calm,
definitely.
and but I'm not always, my family can tell you. I'm like a biatch, moody biatch sometimes. I have definitely have the reputation in my family for that, and I every once in a while, something'll catch me, and it just gets my knickers in a twist, and this happened on Friday. I was so sleep deprived. I'd been covering the goddamn Tom Cruise at North Park Mall, hanging out with all the, in the hordes of people, wrote my story at 2:30 in the morning, file it at 9, and this story lands. This story landed with a bomb on Friday.
You want to tell
And
the
I was
listeners
like,
what
"I
the story
shouldn't even read it, I should go to sleep," and then I was like, "No, I gotta read it." And then I was just, like, jacked on adrenaline, and I was like, "Nancy, I'm so mad right now." But I that it's all of that, it's very interesting when you have those reactions. It's like, what are those really about, you know? Like, what are they about? Because this is not a story about me. I
but
don't
it's
know the
about
subject.
something
I don't but it's
you
about yeah. It's about several things that I know very well. One is
right.
journalism, one is drunken hookup culture, um, and one of them is the painfully binary world into which we've found ourselves, where people are either awesome or criminal. I don't know. I don't know how else to
Mhm.
say it,
Mhm.
I was interviewing Ken Burns last week for the paper because he's coming to town, and he was talking about uh, that we had fallen into the computer age had made us binary, and that it wasn't in fact itself binary, that it was almost like we were a product of the zeros and ones that
Mm.
create computer code. I had never heard that before. And I
Mhm.
found it very fascinating and poetic, if not entirely accurate. I don't know. Um, but anyway, I read a story. Do you want me to tell you what the headline of the story was?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously, I've read it a few times now, but yes, please tell the listeners.
Journalists attest to experiences of sexual misconduct with Wesley Lowery. This is a story by Betsy Morai, I'm going to guess, in CJR, Columbia Journalism Review, right?
Mhm.
So, we've done a lot of these. We've done a lot of these stories, and they have a lot of things in common, right? There's going to be a guy at the center. He's going to usually be a sort of meteorite of some kind,
Mhm.
like he's a rising star in some profession. And
Mhm.
because of that, people are going to want to be near him, but that might enable him to kind of be an asshole. And then that's going to be used to explain why the behavior couldn't be reported sooner, right? I was afraid he had more power over me. Um, Before we get into this particular story, which is, I don't even know, like, how would you, before we get into specifics, like, how would you classify this in the world of Me Too literature? Because God knows there's a canon of it and we've read it.
Yeah, so I think you're exactly right. It's very predictable in terms of there's a male author, usually fairly young, sometimes not, but usually like up and coming, rising star. People want to be around him, including women. And then things kind of go south in ways that they didn't want. At the time, they might have felt icky, but they didn't want to say anything. So it's all sort of very common. And also another commonality in these stories is that it's always happened years ago. It didn't
Hmm.
happen last week. So this particular one the story started from 2018 when he would have been 27 years old. He's 34 now.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I think are different, but I'll preface it by saying, and then we can maybe answer this question. I do wonder, like, why are we reading this story now? You always have to ask this. Every journalist who's had an editor, the editor is going to say, "Why this story now? Why are we talking?" Well, we have a story with Ken Burns because he's got the thing coming out next week. You follow Tom Cruise because he's at a movie. Why are we hearing about Wes Lowery now? It's kind of an interesting question. Like, why? Well, the only reason I can really answer is because at this point it's sort of an evergreen story. As you said, there's a canon of these Me Too stories. Okay, so we're hearing about it because enough stuff agglomerated and the writer thought, she could write about it well. I will say, to credit the writer, though, there's a lot of problems, I think, in where she's kind of leading you where she wants you to go in terms of seeing Lowry as the villain here. I will say this had a lot more meat on the bone than some of these stories do.
I
Like,
agree.
she researched this story. She wrote a story where you could sort of come up with your own decisions about what happened here. She wasn't, she's pretty much in the bag for the gals, but not completely. She gives Lowry props where he should get them. She's thorough. Um,
She's
that said,
thorough.
she's
And
thorough.
mhm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, before we got into a discussion of the piece, I wondered if we wanted to just say, do you know Wes Lowery?
I don't. I know who he is, obviously, because he really he made a name for himself starting with Ferguson when he was like, I think 23. So he's
He's a
very young,
young kid,
young,
and
young. He's
yeah,
black. He's was, sort of writing these stories at a time and they were pretty, as I recall, I'm not like a big, Wes Lowery stan or anything, but he wasn't just like completely on one side of the equation. He was sort of trying to be an interesting voice at this time.
I
And
ag- I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, I admired him. He wrote for the Washington Post, um, and he's 2 books. They Can't Kill Us All, which was apparently 2016, and then American White Lash 2023. Those are pretty incendiary titles. Um, but he did have this edge to him that was like either cocky or too activist. I couldn't figure it out. So one of the things that he does is to, as a reporter at the Washington Post, come out and give a interview to the New York Times, I think magazine, that says like, we don't do journalism right anymore. He's the one that comes up with this like the idea of journalism should be moral certainty. And I'm like,
Yes,
what the fuck does that mean?
that
And
was
he's
a
standing there and I'm like, who is this cocky motherfucker that just changed the rules? Like who who asked him? And
okay.
sure enough, he got booted from Washington Post for
This was
doing for
also
that
the
interview.
this was sort of the elbow from when he went from being like an interesting reporter that you kind of think maybe was on too much on one side to, okay, I'm making a stand here, and not only is my stand right, yours is wrong. It's
Oh,
like,
totally.
and a lot of us are like, excuse me here, like I'm doing journalism over here, and like, no, you're doing it wrong, and I know what's right. This is. I'm sorry, it's very immature. But
Although he was eloquent about it. I mean, I do want to
right.
give him these props, like this guy was obviously really bright, really but he was cocky. You really and
Mm,
I think I want to make that clear because the cockiness, which might have been masking some insecurity, is something that comes across in these stories that we're going to hear later. I also want to say that one thing that really won me over on Wes Lowery was when I heard him on the Fifth Column, because the Fifth Column guys, who are my older brothers that I adore with beyond reason, um, they will talk to people they disagree with, but most people won't come on the show. And so it was always frustrating during this very fraught time around George Floyd because they were asking people on and they wouldn't come on. But Wes Lowery came on. They had a fascinating, like 2.5 hour interview together. It was civil discord. It was exactly what you want from these mega minds. I loved it. So he really won my admiration for that he stood up, and he did this really fascinating project at the Washington Post, which was a database on unarmed black men who had been shot. And one of the things they found, I think this was probably not what he meant to find, was
mm,
how much smaller the number was
yeah.
than what the perception was out there.
Yeah, we've talked
And
about this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
This
mean,
is this has been well documented at this
yeah,
point, but it
yeah,
was we didn't nobody really had numbers for a while. Everybody was just screaming like that woman you saw in Portland, they're
yeah,
killing all
yeah,
our friends.
yeah, in the street. That's right. Yeah. Um, So okay, so now we have the sort of the backstory on Lowry, and I haven't heard his name in a while. I don't. He hasn't really been on the tip, as far as I
No,
know.
because he disappeared into academia.
Right.
He went to some sort of cable news something, but that didn't work out, and then he went to American University. And he
Hmm.
was very involved in, I think, a lot of these initiatives, to kind of like train the next generation of social justice writers and all this kind of stuff that, again, not my bag,
Hmm.
but he would be a good person to do it.
Well,
I
as a
mean, he would sound like one.
he would sound like one. So the article begins basically saying that they have four women, two of whom choose to stay anonymous.
Mhm.
One who is a Wall Street Journal reporter now named Imai Mwazi or Mosey.
Imani Moyes.
Imani Moyes, thank you very much. And then the other one who is I didn't write her name down, but Olivia Messer, who's
Olivia Messer,
is
yeah.
at
She's from
yeah,
Texas.
the Barbed Wire. She's the editor. I had never heard of the Barbed Wire. Obviously, you have because it's
Well, no,
Texas.
not obviously. It's
Okay.
something she created, and it was
Okay.
fairly new, and I was like, "I think I've heard of that." I knew her name, but because she'd written for Texas Monthly, but only once. But she and I have never, like, crossed paths or anything
Okay.
like that, but she's this young upstart. Texas has a lot of criminal justice style. There's the Texas Tribune, a couple of other things where people are trying to operate outside of mainstream journalism. She had started this, and Wes Lowery had helped her. That's going to be part of this story.
So it opens basically saying that there are, four women that felt that he had taken advantage of them when they were drinking. There had been sexual encounters that they had not necessarily wanted or recalled. And, Wes Lowery is another one of these guys that does that. Okay. I mean, this is your lead. Obviously, it leads in with a little more detail than that. But when we get into the story, I'm just going to take the first one. Imai, is that how you say her first name?
Imani is what I would
Imani.
guess.
Imani. So it's a couple of years ago. Do you remember the year? I'm sorry, I'm not getting this right. 20,
2024.
2020. Oh, really? Last year?
Oh, wait, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, it's earlier.
I've I've
28.
got I've got a lot of I'm sorry. I
That's
don't
okay.
know
I think it's
actually.
3 years ago. Whatever. It's within the window. So the behavior we're talking about, behavior, air quotes, is between 2018 and 2024. So okay, this window. She apparently is a fan of his. And she is going to be in the city where he is. They've had Instagram messages, like we all do, with people that we know or like or respect.
Speak for
Hey, do you want to
yourself.
meet? You want to meet when I'm in town? Sounds great. Let's have a coffee. She
Okay,
shows up.
I'm sorry. I know you're probably setting us up, but I can feel my knee jerk coming out.
Do it.
Um, you kind of normalized something that I think is a little bit actually not that normal.
Hey, listeners in listener land, and for those of you on YouTube, maybe watching it, thanks for being here. This is the end of the free portion of this episode. If you would like the entire episode, gotta head over to Substack. That's smokeandpodcast.substack.com. Become a paid subscriber. Many ways to do that. You get the full episodes and you get some other niceties and etc. and etc. And if you are over here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button as well. We appreciate it. Tell your friends. Thanks.
There's an awful lot of stars out here, an awful lot of sky. And I'm turning on the radio, they're playing Let It Ride. Before the band kicks in, the getting better start. Well, I'll stomp a mud hole.